Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission, as always, is pretty straightforward. We take that pile of sources you've given us, dig right in, and pull out the most important bits of knowledge and insight.
Yeah, basically finding the aha moments for you. Think of us as your guides through all this material.
So today, we're doing a deep dive into some, well, really remarkable new stuff coming out of MIT and their collaborators. Two very different areas.
Right, one's in robotics, like really cutting-edge robotics, and the other is maybe surprisingly in agriculture.
We've got info from several places you pointed us to. Carlobag.eu, Horax and AirPods, MIT News, Design and Development Today. Gives us a good mix of perspectives.
Definitely helps to see it from different angles.
Okay, so let's jump into the first big topic. It's this revolutionary new algorithm for robot manipulation. MIT and NVIDIA worked on it. It's called cuTAMP.
And it's all about tackling something that's actually, a huge challenge in robotics. Getting robots to do physical stuff that seems simple to us humans.
Right, like why is it so hard for a robot to, say, pack a suitcase? I saw that analogy in the sources. For us, you just kind of do it.
Exactly. We use our eyes, our sense of space. It's intuitive. We sort of guess and adjust. But a robot, it has to think about every single tiny action.
How to grab something.
Yeah, how to grab it, how to turn it, where exactly to put it down. And it has to do all that while thinking about, not bumping into things and its own physical limits.
And every choice opens up a whole new set of possibilities down the line. It must branch out incredibly fast.
That's the term they use, a combinatorial explosion. Yeah. The number of possible ways things could go just balloons exponentially. Trying to figure it out step by step, or even just randomly trying things, it gets incredibly slow.
Just takes forever.
And often doesn't even work.
Yeah.
One of the researchers made a good point in that huge space of possibilities. A lot of actions the robot does don't actually achieve anything productive, just wasted effort.
Okay, so cuTAMP, this is the fix. How does it get around that explosion?
It is. The big idea is that it speeds up the planning dramatically, and the core change is moving away from testing plans one by one.
So instead of sequential.
Right. It lets the robot think about thousands of possible plans all at the same time, in parallel.
Thousands, simultaneously.
Yeah.
How? That sounds like science fiction.
Well, it relies on some serious computing power, specifically GPUs, graphics processing units. They're using NVIDIA's CUDA platform to make it happen.
Okay. GPUs. Like the kind you find in gaming PCs or for, heavy graphics work.
The very same. But here, instead of drawing images, they're harnessing the GPU structure. All those thousands of processing cores designed for parallel tasks to simulate thousands of different robot plans or actions all at once.
So it's like instead of one robot brain thinking step by step, it's like 1,000 mini brains all trying different approaches at the exact same moment.
That's a pretty good way to picture it, yeah. William Shen, one of the researchers, put it nicely. Using GPUs, the computational cost of optimizing one solution is the same as optimizing hundreds or thousands of solutions. It's a huge shift.
And it matters in the real world, too. I saw a quote from Kalen Garrett at NVIDIA about that.
Right. He said, if your algorithm takes minutes to find a plan as opposed to seconds, that directly costs the business. Time is literally money in manufacturing or logistics.
Makes sense. Getting past that very large search space of useless moves is crucial for efficiency.
Absolutely.
So what's the magic inside cuTAMP? You can't just be throwing computing power at it, right? There has to be some intelligence there.
No, you're right. It's clever. It combines two main techniques. First is something called smart sampling.
Smart sampling.
Yeah. Instead of just guessing randomly, it focuses the search on plans that are, most likely to work from the start.
Yeah.
Plans that already seem close to obeying the rules and constraints. They start near what's called the solution manifold.
Solution manifold. Like the zone where good answers probably live.
Basically, yeah. It directs the search efficiently. Then the second part is parallel optimization.
Okay.
Once it has these promising starting points, cuTAMP figures out a cost for thousands of them simultaneously.
Cost meaning?
How good the plan is. Does it avoid collisions? Does it follow the robot's movement rules? Does it actually achieve what the user asked for? It calculates this for all of them, tweaks them in parallel, picks the best ones, and repeats until, bang, it finds a plan that works.
That sounds incredibly efficient. Much better than just trying things one by one.
Yeah.
Has it worked on actual robots, not just simulations?
Oh, yeah. They tested it on some tricky problems, like packing things into really tight spaces, those Tetris-style challenges mentioned in the sources.
Uh-huh.
In simulation, it solved these highly constrained problems in just seconds, things that might take older methods ages, or they might just fail completely.
And on real hardware.
Yep. They deployed it on several actual robot arms, a UR5, a Canova arm, one from MIT, even an NVIDIA humanoid robot.
Ooh.
And on a real arm, doing these complex tasks, the algorithm consistently found a working plan in under 30 seconds.
Under 30 seconds for a complex plan like that. That's really fast. And you're saying it's not machine learning. It doesn't need tons of training data first.
Correct. That's a huge plus. It's not based on learning from examples. You can give it a new problem, and if a solution is physically possible, the algorithm is designed to provably solve it. Makes it much easier to deploy.
That adaptability is massive for industry. So where does this tech go next? What's the bigger picture?
Well, the immediate uses are pretty clear. Factories, warehouses, packing things, assembling parts, moving goods around. But the approach itself is general. It could apply to, a robot needing to use different tools for a job.
Makes sense. Anything further out?
The really exciting step they're planning is integration with large language models, LLMs, and vision language models.
Connecting it to AI that understands language and images.
Exactly. The dream is you could just tell a robot, maybe using voice commands, hey, pack my beach bag. And the robot, using cuTAMP's planning engine and the VLM's understanding, figures out how to grab the towel, the sunscreen, the book, and fit them all in.
Whoa. From struggling with basic block packing to taking complex voice commands, that really is a leap.
It's a serious acceleration in what robots can potentially do physically in the world.
Okay. Wow. Let's completely switch gears now. A big pivot, like you said. We're moving from robots to agriculture. Still MIT and collaborators, but this time with SMART, the Singapore-MIT Alliance for Research and Technology.
Right. And this next deep dive is looking at a really novel approach to plant health and nutrition.
And it's tackling a pretty big, maybe underappreciated problem with current farming methods. What are the main issues with just spraying creeps the traditional way?
Well, spraying pesticides, herbicides, nutrients, it's standard practice, but it turns out it's incredibly wasteful. The sources suggest something like 30 to 50%, maybe even half, of what's sprayed never actually hits the target plant.
Half. Where does it go then?
That's the problem. It just goes somewhere else. It drifts in the air, washes into the soil, gets into streams, groundwater. It pollutes.
And harms other things.
Exactly. Beneficial insects, vital soil microbes, other plants. Plus, it's a huge waste of money for farmers buying expensive chemicals that just blow away or wash off. And the chemicals that do miss the target aren't doing their job protecting the crop or feeding it.
So it's bad for the environment, bad for the ecosystem, bad for the farmer's wallet, and less effective. Seems like a system ripe for improvement.
Definitely. Which brings us to the innovation. Silk microneedles.
Silk microneedles.
For plants.
Yep. Tiny, tiny needles made out of silk protein. The idea is to completely bypass spraying and deliver stuff, agrochemicals, vitamins, whatever, directly inside the plant tissue.
Huh. Silk doesn't sound very needle-like. Wouldn't it be too soft? Or snap?
That's where the cleverness comes in. The material is silk fibroin, the actual protein from silk. And this is key. The needles aren't solid rods. They're hollow.
Hollow, like tiny straws. Kind of, yeah. That hollow structure is crucial because it means they can hold and deliver a much larger payload, a bigger dose of the active substance, right into the plant's vascular system where it's needed. This work just came out in Nature Nanotechnology, actually.
Okay. Hollow silk needles. How on earth do you make something like that? Sounds like it would need super high-tech, expensive equipment, clean rooms, and all that.
You'd think so, right. But here's the really wild part. The fabrication is apparently surprisingly simple. The sources mention it can be done in less controlled environments. One quote even suggested it could potentially be done in your kitchen.
Get out! In your kitchen. How?
Okay, so you take the silk protein, the fibroin, and mix it with a simple saline solution, salt water. You pour this mix into tiny cone-shaped molds.
Right.
Then you just let the water evaporate. As it dries, the silk solidifies into the needle shape. But the salt, it forms crystals inside the silk structure as it solidifies.
So the salt acts as a temporary scaffold.
Precisely. Then you just wash the solidified needles, the salt dissolves and washes away, and what's left behind is the silk needle with a hollow, porous channel running through it.
That is brilliantly simple. Using a salt crystallization like that. Wow.
Isn't it elegant? And as Benedetto Morelli, the lead researcher, points out, agrochemicals are vital, but they're costly and have environmental downsides. So this kind of precise, targeted delivery is really needed.
Makes total sense.
Oh.
Okay, so they can make them easily. What did they actually try injecting into plants with these things?
Well, one of the main experiments was tackling chlorosis in tomato plants. That's when leaves turn yellow because they lack iron.
Okay, iron deficiency.
Right. And spraying iron usually doesn't work that well because plants don't absorb it efficiently through their leaves. But with the microneedle...
I could inject it directly.
Exactly. They injected iron right into the stems of these iron-deficient tomato plants, and it worked. They confirmed the iron got into the plant's system, delivered it over time, and the plant scientists involved saw minimal negative side effects.
So targeted treatment for deficiencies. That's cool. What about adding something totally new to the plant?
This is where it gets potentially game-changing. They tried injecting vitamin B12.
B12, but plants don't make B12, right? That's something we need.
Exactly. Humans need it. We usually get it from animal products. Plants don't naturally contain it. So they injected B12 solution into the tomato plant stems using the silk needles.
Oh, no.
The B12 was actually transported through the plant's vascular system all the way up, and it accumulated in the tomatoes themselves before they were harvested.
You're kidding. So they basically fortified the tomatoes with B12 while they were growing.
Precisely. Morelli calls it biofortification. He said it opens up many potential applications for enriching crops with vitamins or other nutrients that they wouldn't normally have. Imagine adding essential nutrients right at the source.
That's huge. Not just healthier plants, but potentially more nutritious food directly from the field.
Yeah.
What else? Any other applications?
Yes, they also showed they can use the needles for monitoring plant health in real time, like diagnostics.
How did that work?
They tested it for detecting heavy metals, like cadmium, which can contaminate soil and get taken up by plants. They inserted the needles into the stems, and the needles actually absorbed cadmium out of the plant's sap.
How quickly?
Really quickly. Within just 15 minutes, they could detect the cadmium absorbed into the needle.
Wow. So it's like a rapid test trip for plant toxins.
Sort of, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just a one-off test. They showed you could leave a needle in and collect tiny samples of sap over an extended period, like 18 hours in one experiment.
Continuous monitoring.
Could be. Think about getting early warnings for drought stress or nutrient deficiencies or toxins long before you can actually see any symptoms on the plant.
So these little silk needles are both a delivery system and a sensor platform. That's incredibly versatile.
It really is. Now, obviously, in the research, they applied them by hand, but the long-term vision is automation.
Like integrating them into farm equipment?
Yeah. Maybe mounted on tractors or potentially even delivered by drones someday, something that could apply them precisely and efficiently across a whole field.
How does this fit in with, current farming? Is it meant to replace spraying entirely?
Probably not entirely, at least not initially. It's seen more as a complementary tool. It gives farmers a much more precise, much more environmentally friendly option.
Less waste, less pollution.
Right. Saves money on chemicals, reduces the environmental impact, and could actually make treatments more effective because you're getting them exactly where they need to go.
And thinking about the silk itself, you mentioned it's biocompatible, biodegradable.
Right.
Does that open doors beyond agriculture?
Absolutely. That's a really interesting side note. Because silk is safe for biological systems and breaks down naturally, the researchers think this method for making hollow microneedles could potentially be adapted for human health uses.
Like delivering drugs through the skin.
Exactly. Transdermal or intradermal drug delivery, or maybe even for continuous health monitoring in people, similar to the plant sap monitoring. It's a neat example of how an innovation in one field can spark ideas in another.
It really is. From ancient silk production to helping plants, potentially back to helping humans. That's quite a journey for a material.
It is. But focusing back on the agriculture side, the main goal is pretty powerful. They want to maximize plant growth without negatively impacting the health of the farm or the biodiversity of surrounding ecosystems. That core idea that there should be no trade-off between the agricultural industry and the environment.
Try to break that link. Okay, so let's try and tie these two deep dives together a bit. We had the robots.
Yeah, robots getting incredibly fast at planning complex physical moves, all thanks to harnessing parallel computing with GPUs.
Which could totally change automation speed, flexibility, maybe even how we interact with robots eventually.
Potentially, yeah. Imagine robots assembling things much faster, or packing warehouses more efficiently, or even understanding those complex voice commands we talked about.
And then On the completely different side, we had this precision tech using silk, a natural material, made with surprising simplicity to make farming fundamentally better.
Right, making it way more efficient, less wasteful, better for the environment, maybe even making food more nutritious and giving farmers new diagnostic tools.
It strikes me that both, though they seem worlds apart, supercomputers versus silk protein, are really about targeted, efficient use of resources.
That's a great point. One is about optimizing computational resources to plan actions precisely. The other is about optimizing the delivery of physical resources, chemicals, nutrients directly where they're needed, minimizing waste.
Getting the right thing, whether it's information for a robot's next move or iron for a plant stem, to the right place at the right time, using really innovative methods.
Pulling ideas from different fields, like using gaming hardware for robotics or biomaterials science for farming.
Yeah, we've definitely pulled some fascinating threads from the sources you share today. Robot arms solving packing puzzles in seconds, tiny silk needles putting vitamins into tomatoes. It's pretty mind-bending stuff.
It really shows the kind of leaps happening at the intersection of different fields: tech, engineering, material science, biology.
So here's something to think about. If we can get robots planning like that, and we can use something like silk to deliver medicine directly into a plant's veins, what other problems out there, things that seem really hard or maybe even impossible right now, are just waiting for that kind of unexpected combination, that mix of clever algorithms, new materials, maybe just a totally fresh way of looking at it?
What big challenges in your world could use that kind of deep dive thinking, pulling insights from unexpected places?
Something to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.